grungy dudes, sexy chicks in leather, and some blood sacrifice. Sounds like heavy metal to me. We Summon the Darkness tells the story of six 20-somethings leaving a heavy metal concert in the 80s for an after party and then soon have to spend the rest of their night fighting for their lives from a demonic, obsessed cult. So this is a movie that I actually just found out about this morning. I had the day off of work, was flipping through some of the VOD choices, seeing if anything new was out, and apparently this is a movie that came out last year at Fantastic Fest and just dropped onto VOD today, so it is there for your viewing pleasure. Decided to check it out, and this one I actually had a pretty good time with. But before I tell you all the reasons why, be sure to like and share this video if you enjoy it at the end, and be sure to hit that subscribe button on your way out if you are not already one of my awesome subscribers. And if you enjoyed this channel so much that you want to find out how to support it and help it grow, check down below in the video description for my Patreon link. That's the best way to help this channel grow and show your support and get cool exclusive content in return for your eyes only. With all that being said, guys, time to summon the darkness.
My brothers and sisters, the evil that is heavy metal rock music is unwavering in its goal to corrupt our children's souls.
So right off the bat, I gotta praise the fact that this movie has a nice mix of horror and comedy. I've said it before in a couple other reviews, horror and comedy is kind of like a weird mix for me sometimes because you have to have enough there to please the horror fans, but it actually has to be fun and enjoyable on the comedy side too. Neither side of that genre can be an afterthought in that mix, and this is one of the few movies I've seen that actually mixes it pretty well. It has a lot of the same vibe and the same tone as The Babysitter from a couple years ago, which I was a big fan of, so if you like that type of movie, this one's a little bit more R-rated, but this one has that very similar mix of horror comedy and the same kind of genre that it's going after, and I think it pulled it off pretty well. It has the horror, dark, bloody elements, you know, there's people that die, there's some things going on as far as like ties to heavy metal and that scene of that era where they're like, oh, heavy metal fans are demon worshippers, and there's a civil unrest going on in the background. But you also have the fun, lighthearted, situational humor of things that these people in this film have to go through. I also thought all the acting, pretty much all the way around, was pretty good for this. I mean, nobody's gonna win an Oscar for this type of film, but nobody stood out as just not wanting to be there or not nailing their character or just kind of being a sore thumb as far as how much they stood out amongst their castmates. Pretty much everybody here, even Johnny Knoxville that has a small little role, does their character pretty well for this type of film, you know? Nobody's taking things too seriously, but everybody kind of has their role. You've got Alexandra Daddario, who's kind of like the main cast member of this, I would say, and I've always liked her. She's a pretty fun actress. She's kind of the mean girl of this group. You basically have two groups. You have three grunge dudes who are in a rock band that they meet at the concert, and you have three heavy metal chicks that went to this concert, and Alexandra Daddario is kind of like the mean girl of the girls group. Then you have another chick who's kind of like the promiscuous one, you know, she's the one that's, you know, pumping gas and sees the guy looking at her ass and she kind of like curves it a little bit more. You got the outsider chick who feels like she's a little bit more quiet, a little bit more off to the sidelines. And then the three rock guys are pretty entertaining too because they act like rock guys. You got the drummer, you got the bassist that won't shut the fuck up, you got the front man that thinks that everything that he says is the greatest thing in the world. So all these characters played their part pretty well, and I enjoyed watching all six of them, and Johnny Knoxville.
Girls, be careful now. There's a lot of evil out there.
You don't think we can fend for ourselves?
I also like the fact that this movie actually tries to show some heavy metal knowledge. This is one that's not going to be something that stands out for a lot of people, but if you are a metal fan, and if you notice that this film takes place in '88, there is some things that these guys say and that these women say that definitely fits the part of how 20-something heavy metal fans would talk in the end of the 80s, where they're referencing their first concert and talking about, you know, oh, I was at the Def Leppard tour in '83, and, you know, the one guy's like, oh, I was at, you know, the Diary of a Madman tour, I saw the last show with Randy Rhoads. They start debating Metallica about what are they gonna do without Cliff Burton, and, you know, they sucked ever since Mustaine went away, but if we didn't have him leave, we wouldn't have Megadeth. Like, there's all these nice little Easter eggs and dialogue in there that, as a heavy metal fan, it makes me invest in these characters, because so many times you have people that play heavy metal fans, but the writers and the director don't really put the TLC in there to actually appeal to heavy metal fans. So I appreciated that extra effort. And my final positive is that the ideas that this movie's going for, the genre, the subgenre, the different little story twists that it tries to put in here, they're twists and they're story directions that we have seen in movies before that we've seen in this subgenre before, but they do enough to kind of give themselves their own identity with the characters and with the, you know, the 88 heavy metal backdrop, and with some of the themes they're going after about, you know, religion and, you know, the culture of heavy metal at the time, that even though there's some things in here that you have seen before, I feel like the movie has enough of a different skin on it that it's still enjoyable. And it is a movie that knows exactly what it is. It's not trying to be the greatest ever. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's just trying to be a fun, little, simple genre flick. And in my opinion, it succeeds in that. Now moving on to the negatives, and I pretty much have 3 big ones. The first one, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of the way because it's not the movie's fault, but I will warn you now, do not watch the trailer to this film. I watched the trailer after I saw the movie because there's some things in this film that happened and I was kind of curious, like, I wonder how they marketed this thing. And you play the trailer, and the trailer pretty much lays out the entire movie, and it blows at least 2 of the plot reveals in it, like, blatantly. So I actually think you'll have a much better time in this movie if you just walk into it blind, or if I sold you enough that you want to check it out. Don't go any further with the marketing. Just kind of press play and see if you enjoy it from there. Next, which might kind of contradict what I just said a little bit, the movie itself does telegraph some of its plot reveals, I feel like, a little bit too much. Now maybe that's just me. You know, there's sometimes I see a movie and I could see plot twists and reveals and, you know, the rug being pulled out from underneath me miles away, and a lot of other people get surprised by it. So maybe it's just me, but certain directions that this movie took to try to subvert your expectations or set up red herrings. There's things in this film that I feel like there's extra scenes added that were so isolated that it tipped me off. It's hard to describe specifically without giving away plot details, but we'll give an example. Is like 2 characters go into the house where everybody else is partying outside to have a little conversation, and the dialect and the subtext that's going on within their conversation tipped me off to what they were really talking about, and I'm like, okay, you didn't need that scene. You could have taken that scene out completely and your reveal would have been a little bit more surprising. The movie does that a couple of times in my opinion. So let me know down below in the comments after you've seen the movie, or if you've already checked this out, and let me know if I'm on an island with that or if you thought the same thing. If you've seen the trailer, you can't comment because the trailer tells you anything anyway, but let me know down below if the plot reveals and plot twists were telegraphed a little bit too much for you, because for me, they were pretty easy to pick out. And my final negative, which is a shame, and it's probably something that very few people that are passionate about heavy metal like myself are going to be the only ones talking about this, but for a movie that goes so far to show its heavy metal knowledge, why the fuck don't we have more heavy metal from the 80s in the soundtrack? You get one 80s song that I recognized, at least, that's not a heavy metal song, it's just an 80s song towards the 3rd act of the film, but throughout the first half of this movie, there were so many opportunities where you could have had Metallica playing, or Maiden, or Sabbath, or somebody from that era to just flesh out that era a little bit more. Too much of this movie was just like generic 80s metal instrumentals in the background, where like they're acting like you're listening to a famous band, but you know that there's nobody playing that music. That's just like a track that they pulled off of YouTube somewhere. To me, big missed opportunity. If you're gonna appeal to heavy metal fans, go all in. I wanna hear some fucking music. But all in all, guys, this is not like a movie that's gonna top, you know, our list for the end of the year, but for a lot of us that are in quarantine right now, I thought that it was a nice little surprise. It's a movie that I had no expectations for, had no knowledge of, watched it blind, and had a pretty good time with it. So I think a lot of you will enjoy it as well. Just expect some of the plot reveals to maybe be a little bit too telegraphed, you know. Don't try to figure it out too much, but there's some things in here that I feel like a little bit better storytelling could have made it much better as far as surprising you a little bit more. So if you're a fan of horror comedies, or if you like the heavy metal era of the 80s and you want to see what all of that mashed together is with a little bit of blood sacrifice sprinkled on top, definitely check out We Summon the Darkness. It's online right now, so stream it. So what did you guys think of We Summon the Darkness? Did you enjoy this? Did you feel like it subverted your expectations? Did you feel like every single turn and twist was just telegraphed too far along the way? Was it too similar to other movies that you've seen? Or was this a nice little surprise to have while watching things in quarantine? Let me know down below all of your thoughts on We Summon the Darkness. Be sure to like and share this video and hit that damn subscribe button if you enjoyed this video and aren't already one of my awesome subscribers. And remember, as always, people, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean that you have to be.